Good evening. Welcome to the Bennington Select Board bi-monthly meeting. It's Monday, July 11th, 2016. We're gathered as a select board at the Bennington Fire Facility. Before we get into the minutes and the other business tonight, if we could all introduce ourselves. I'm Tom Jacobs, and I'm the chair of the board this session.
My name is Donald Campbell. Good evening.
I'm Jeannie Jenkins.
Good evening. I'm Michael Keane on this beautiful summer evening.
I'm Jim Carroll. I'm Justin Corcoran.
And I'm Jean Connor.
And I'm the town manager, Stu Hurd.
And Linda Bermudez, as we say, our esteemed reporter. Thank you, Linda.
Still esteemed.
If we could all stand, and just before we have our Pledge of Allegiance, if we could just join together in a moment of silent meditation for the tragedy that has happened in Dallas over the last part of last week. It seems like every 2 weeks we're gathering here in a moment of silence, and that is wearing on the country and the world. Thank you. Michael, would you lead us in Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As is our custom, we have a consent agenda consisting of the minutes from the meeting of June 27th, 2016, and the warrants that have already been circulated and signed by the board. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion, abstentions?
Tom, just a quick note for the board members. You will notice there were two warrants tonight.
Yes, I
Warrant
did
number 25, which is the second to the last warrant for the last fiscal year, and warrant number 1, which begins this fiscal year. And you'll probably see one more at the next meeting, warrant 26.
Thank you.
And what's the nature, Stu, just to be clear, of the warrant?
The last warrant report.
Yeah, we have
But
to,
nothing out of,
expenses that were incurred in the last fiscal year, those bills may not have arrived yet. We have up to 60 days to get those in and credit them against fiscal year 16, when we're already in 17. So we separate the warrants, we separate those payments. It's a matter of tracking for.
but it's nothing out of character from 1 week to the next?
No, it's what we do every year.
If there's no further discussion, all in favor of the consent agenda signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, abstentions, or otherwise? No.
I'm going to abstain just because I haven't had a chance to watch you all on television yet.
Okay.
Check the minutes.
Great, thank you. Record will indicate Donald's abstention. Were you there, Justin, at the last meeting?
I was not.
Do you want to abstain?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
I watched. So.
You did?
I don't know.
Hey,
Got the replay.
that's partial abstention. Your spirit was here, right?
I was here in
There
spirit.
you go. Okay, we'll move on. We now have reserved for citizens' comment period, 15 minutes. These are matters that are not on our agenda for tonight, but the public would like to just address or share with the select board. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to share comments or advices or the spirit of the day with the board? I see that we're going to have an opportunity for extra time if there are no citizens that are going to step forward. So we'll go immediately into the discussion presentation by the Bennington Airport Development Company. And would you step up, identify yourself, and purpose of your visit, please?
Well, that would be me. My name is John Lakakis, and I have on this laptop an absolutely brilliant PowerPoint presentation that none of you will see. Because apparently the technology of this brand new computer does not mate very well with what Cat TV has here. Thus sparing you all from yet another PowerPoint I'm with the Bennington
John, let me
Airport-
ask you to speak a little closer to the microphone. Thank you.
I'm with the Bennington Airport Development Corporation. It's myself, Chuck Suss, and Dave Corey. We formed this nonprofit in an effort to revitalize the Bennington Airport. The airport used to have a payroll of about $1 million out there. That's when Air Now was going great guns as business air. And as you may or may not know, Air Now is no more. So since then, the airport's been pretty moribund, not much going on. So our mission is to get the place back up on wheels and turn it back into something that's part of the economy around here. So our mission, as we see it, is to increase airport activity, get more landings and takeoffs going there, more fuel sales, more overall operations, and more events going on at the airport. Events for the public, both the flying public and folks right here in Bennington. Eventually, we want to get the airport with so much activity that a private fixed-base operation comes in, and a fixed-base operator is someone who rents airplanes, fixes airplanes, sells gas, sells charts, all that good stuff. Get enough activity there that a private operator can come in and take over from us. To that end, we entered into an operating agreement with the state. We have a 2-year operating contract that took effect on May 15th. All the funds that we generate operating the airport go straight back into the airport, and they're dedicated to increasing activity and improving the airport. At the end of the 2 years, all the assets that we've generated, all the funds that we've created, get turned back over to the state. I see a question for me.
No, I think I'll wait till the end, but go ahead,
Okay.
John.
So we have this 2-year agreement. We all view the airport as a tremendous community asset. It provides access to the Bennington area and to Bennington County in general to general aviation. And this includes everything from people who own small airplanes like Piper Cubs, all the way up to some of the smaller corporate jets. We regularly have some corporate operators coming in, some charter operators coming in, especially now that Mount Snow is really starting to get traction. We're getting more and more folks who are looking at Bennington as a place to base their airplane or to come in when the weather is terrible in Mount Snow and drive on over there. That's how it was 10 or 12 years ago. We had a steady stream of folks in the winter, some of whom would actually buy cars and leave them at the airport so that they could come up every weekend to ski, snow, and the other mountains around here. So we're looking to get that part of the puzzle back in place. The airport also enhances local and regional marketing. As a way to get into Bennington for a lot of the more affluent clientele who have airplanes, and even for some of the middle-class folks who have small airplanes like Piper Cubs and Cherokees and whatnot, having a functioning airport is a real plus because they're always looking for places to go and things to do. And on a more fundamental basis, the airport has been designated as a common distribution point and response center for disasters here in southwestern Vermont, which is only logical because if all the roads are cut off, getting stuff in by air is going to be the only way to go. One of the things we're trying to do to try and get more traffic into Bennington and reintegrate it back into the economy of the town is we're developing day trip packages. Now, the poster child that I always use as an example for this is playing golf at Mount Anthony Country Club. Someone can fly in, play a round of golf, have dinner at the country club, get back in their airplane, and go home. They've spent an entire afternoon here in Bennington. They can come in and visit the monument, go to the museum, visit the old First Church, have dinner, go home. For those looking for a somewhat longer stay and something to do, taking a tour of the local breweries, since we don't want anybody touring the breweries and then getting in their airplane and going home. So it's day trip packages like this that we can use to market to the general aviation community and give them something to do when they come here. There's a phenomenon in general aviation called the $100 hamburger. And I was talking about this with Mr. Carroll. People will fly 150, 200 miles to an airport if there's a restaurant there or a pancake breakfast, as we've had a couple of times out here at the airport. Just to give them an excuse to get in the airplane and go someplace. It's more utilitarian than let's just go fly around and see what's out there. We intend to take full advantage of that, and the day trip packages is an integral part of that. So our next step in all of this is to implement these plans. Now, this is where Mr. Suss, Mr. Corey, and myself all come in, because we all have decades of experience in aviation. Dave Corey has been at it for going on 50 years. Chuck Suss has been involved in it for 35 years. I've got about the same amount of experience in the field. We all know people, we have contacts in industry, and we know where to go to reach out to the flying public. So we're going to be doing some specialized aviation marketing that's targeted just to that niche. But most of what we're doing marketing-wise can actually cross over and be used by other organizations like the Better Bennington Corporation. Because certainly the things that attract people to fly here are things that could attract people to drive here. So to that end, I have met with John Shanahan, and we're starting to try and work up some plans together for ways that we can make more day trips and market them out both to ground-bound people and the general aviation public. We're changing the level of service at the airport. Up until last month, the airport was only attended 5 days a week. We now have service 7 days a week with a 24-hour call-out service. So when someone comes to the airport on a Saturday, instead of seeing tumbleweeds blowing across an empty ramp, someone is there to greet them. Do you need a car? Can I fill your airplane with gas? What do you need? And getting that level of service is, as we see it, the bare minimum. On top of that is what we call the concierge service model, in which someone can call ahead and say, you know, I would like tickets to Old Castle Theater and maybe some dinner reservations. And we can get them the tickets, get them their reservations, have a car waiting for them, and they show up at the airport and off they go. All of this bringing money into the local economy and getting the airport back to where it was, something that helps drive the economy here. We already have some businesses out at the airport. We're looking to attract more. We have Green Mountain Skydiving. He's fairly new. He moved in last fall. His business is slowly picking up. And if you've never tried skydiving, Alex is definitely the guy to try it with. We had a couple out last weekend, a guy and a girl. He went up and did his first tandem jump, and when he came down, his girlfriend went up to do her first tandem skydiving. And while the airplane was climbing out, her boyfriend spray painted, "Will you marry me?" in the grass next to the runway.
Hey, that's great.
So she jumped out of the airplane and you could hear her screaming from 10,000 feet up.
No.
But she came down and she saw that and said yes. So
Great.
a happy ending there, and one of many that we want to get going out at the airport. We have 802 Corporation, they're headquartered out there. AQX is headquartered out there. Tireworks is out there. The Bennington Airport Development Corporation. We have an Experimental Aircraft Association chapter. We just started, we haven't quite opened it. We're looking at Bennington Battle Day to open it. The Andy Anderson EAA Build Center, where people can assemble aircraft for amateur and home built airplanes. We have an electric model airplane flying club out there. We have a Civil Air Patrol squadron out there. So we have all kinds of things going on, and we're open to any activity that's aviation related. Things that we're starting to develop. We're trying to put together a flying club. I have a line on a flight instructor and an airplane. We're looking for another airplane to supplement that, so we should be able to offer flight instruction and rentals out at the airport. I believe that education is a strong part of whatever we do out there, so we're trying to turn it into an educational annex. I met today with Catherine McClure for some pointers on getting the public schools involved, because what we would like to do is set it up as a feeder program for Vermont Flight Academy, Vermont Tech, and any engineering schools. So we're envisioning several different tracks for that, everything from the practical, vocational type of education to advanced STEM education in engineering and technology. We're also looking at it as a potential educational annex for continuing education for adults. People who would like to learn more about how aircraft are repaired, perhaps pursue a second career in either aircraft maintenance or aircraft assembly. And we also want to establish regular rotations with the elementary schools so that once a week a class is coming out to tour the airport, see the airplanes, put their hands on things, learn about stuff. So this brings us down to what do we need from the town? What can everybody in Bennington do to help us out? Well, we're looking for some courtesy cars. Almost every general aviation airport in the country, when you land there, they have courtesy cars that will let you go into town, have lunch, see the sights, come back. It's not a substitute for a rental car, but for a short time stay, it's just an added convenience. So we're looking for that. We're working with Mr. Hurd to try and get some defunct police cars. Any other suggestions, or if anybody has a junker they'd like to donate to us, as long as it runs, we're very open to that. If you have a group, or just you as an individual would like to come out to the airport and tour the place, come on out. We're there 7 days a week. 8:30 to 4:30 is the normal business hours. If you want to come out at a later hour, just let me know and we'll definitely accommodate you. We have events at the airport. We're planning a fly-in for Bennington Battle Day, just as we had last year. We've got an antique car club coming out. We've got an international motorcycle club coming out. We have antique airplanes coming in. And of course, you can join any one of the many organizations that we have out at the airport, whether it's the Civil Air Patrol, the Model Flying Club. Most of all, we just want people to come out and visit us. Learn about airplanes, learn about aviation, learn about all the ways that aviation can help your business, help the local economy, what we have in the way of careers and opportunities, and what aviation is like as recreation. Because who knows, you may decide that you want to own your very own airplane, and we can help you live that dream. And that concludes my brilliant PowerPoint presentation. Questions?
That's a great presentation, John. I think you did a great job without the PowerPoint. Really got
It's the riveting graphics.
a real flavor. The old way is sometimes the best way, right? We'll all have questions here. How active is your marketing right now? Do you have a budget that you've created, or how are you funding this operation?
Our funding comes from revenues that we generate from the airport, plus a small stipend from the state to help and encourage the efforts that we're doing out there. Our marketing efforts thus far are, we have a website, and that's www.benningtonairport.com, which we should be taking live this week.
Right.
And on that, you will find all our day trip packages and so forth. Some of the specialized marketing that we're going to be doing is in AOPA Pilot, EAA Sport Flyer magazine, online groups like Social Flight, and of course conventional social media like Facebook and that sort of thing. Our budget is as little as we can get away with.
That's the appropriate way to start that business.
Yeah, and because of our industry connections that all of us have from all our time in the business, we can get an awful lot of leverage out of who we know and how long we've known them.
I would think, this is sort of an aside, but with Chuck Suss and his expertise in the culinary arts, you know, if you had a restaurant out there, you probably have quite a few folks enjoying that. Is he involved in that part of it? Is cooking? Or
We have all fantasized about having a restaurant out at the airport. I would give substantial body parts to get a restaurant out at the airport.
Yeah.
Restaurants at airports, they're a magnet. There's a restaurant up in Rutland. People beat a steady path to that restaurant, both from the ground side and from the air side.
Mm-hmm.
Aeons ago, I used to work on airplanes at Danbury Airport. And there was a young man who started a coffee bar in the ground floor of the shop that I worked at. All he sold was Dunkin' Donuts and cups of coffee. And every weekend there was a line out the door of people who were there just because it was a place to fly to have a donut and some coffee. So if we could get an actual restaurant out there, that would be great. And any of you restaurateurs out there who are thinking about it, please call me. I will be more than happy to do whatever I can to hook you up with that.
Thanks. I go right up the line. Jeannie, would you like to?
Yeah, two things. So you mentioned Mount Snow, and people, did you say used to fly in?
Yes.
So was the loss of air now, did that affect Mount Snow, or is that a separate?
Separate thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you
Air Now
know?
was all just cargo.
Okay.
And Mount Snow kind of, it went with the rest of the ski industry. It sort of hit hard times, and now they're coming back with the Hermitage.
Okay, yeah, I knew about the Hermitage. Okay, and the other thing, do you foresee needing to hire people as this evolves out at the airport? It seems like you're gonna need staff.
Well, we're certainly hoping to, and that's all part of getting the business and activity level up. Frankly, fuel sales is what supports these things, and fuel sales is the yardstick that any private company is going to look at to determine whether or not they can make a profit at this. Our fuel sales are, at this point, not enough to maintain the airport. So our first mission is to market and improve the service to get the fuel sales up. And from there, everything else can flow. Because we would like to get a mechanic on the field. Until I can show a mechanic that we have enough airplanes in activity to make it worth his while, he's not going to come. And without a mechanic, it's very hard to attract other people to come to the airport. So all of this has to sort of go on at once. But yes, we are hoping that at some point, either we're going to be hiring people, or whoever comes behind us will be hiring people.
Justin?
John, is there any other airports in the general area that you could point to as a model of what you'd like to see ours become?
North Adams is probably as close as you could get. There's a single runway airport, small FBO. They have a couple of other businesses on the airport like Turboprop East that cater to the turbine crowd. The difference there is that that airport is owned by the town of North Adams, and they just sort of operate it to keep it going. Our airport is operated by the state of Vermont, with Bennington Airport Development Corporation operating it under what's called an FBO agreement. We've had to recast that agreement, but it's essentially the same as you would find at any other airport in the state. So models to look at, there really isn't anything like what we're doing, because no other airports in this state or any place else that I'm aware of are in as extreme a condition as this airport is. Nor, I think, has as much potential as this airport has, because it can act as a feeder both for places like Mount Snow and Manchester and the ski mountains up there, and in a more figurative sense, it can act as a feeder for kids and young adults who are looking to explore careers. So these are all things that I want to sort of weld together in one package out there.
How similar is that to what they do in Rutland, or what goes on at that airport? Are you familiar with?
Rutland is a two-runway airport. It's much larger, also owned by the state. It has a self-sustaining FBO called Columbia Air Service, and Columbia draws quite a bit of revenue from regular scheduled operations, including Wiggins, which flies cargo in and out of there twice a day, and Cape Air. So they already have an operations base plus a number of airplanes based there, which is sufficient to support a mechanic and all the other operations that go on there. We don't have that yet, but we will.
Thanks.
I think we're gonna run over on time because I got a lot of questions.
Start. Go ahead.
Certainly, I applaud your efforts, John. And I'm recalling when I was a kid, Donald may remember this. The airport partnered with I believe it was the Bennington Fire Department and the Rescue Squad as a fundraiser. And my memory from way back then was that it was the very first time I ever saw a cannon fired. And they had loaded it with a tennis ball with a ribbon on it, and the kids were far down the tarmac, and the kid who caught it got a prize. Anyway, the point that I want to make is that partnering with the Bennington Fire Department and the Rescue Squad in conjunction with, let's say, a fundraiser certainly would get you a lot of attention, because it did historically. Secondly, with respect to marketing, I believe that the target market that you might want to reach are folks from the Albany and, let's say, Rensselaer, Newburgh area, bringing them up here. And with respect to that, are there fees for people when they land their planes at the airport?
No landing fee. We have an overnight parking fee of $5, which is waived if you buy gas. If you leave a car out there, we charge you $1 a day.
All right.
Other than that, we have no fees, no handling fees, no ramp fees, no landing fees.
All right, well, nevertheless, you know, I think if I may be so bold, for you to, you know, partner with similar organizations like the Bennington Fire Department and the Rescue Squad as a fundraiser, I mean, I've never forgotten going out there, or even, for that matter, an air show.
Air shows are tough, but we do have those on the horizon. I have had meetings with the fire department, not to involve fundraising, but mostly to start doing crash fire and rescue drills out there. Because as far as I know, there has not been an actual drill on the airport in the last 10 years. So.
And I also remember one other thing, and that is that I believe it was the Bennington Fire Department and the Chamber got together and had a car show out there. But that was many, many years, probably over 30, 40 years ago.
The car show used to be out there. That was a long time ago. And as I mentioned, we have our own event coming up on Battle Day, and that's our new Wings and Wheels event. We'll have antique aircraft flying in, British motor cars, international motorcycles, all kinds of good stuff. And I believe it's a French toast breakfast this time around.
Thank you.
What's the radius for your fly-ins? How far out do you usually get with that?
Typically 150 to 200 miles. We're also cognizant of the fact that the flying public doesn't end at the Canadian border, so we're trying to push our marketing up north to get some of those folks from Canada to come down and spend their Canadian dollars with us.
Sure. Great.
Thank you, John. The reason I have so many questions is I think this is very exciting, so just bear with me. Remind me of the corporate structure. You said it's not, is it a C3, C4, C5? What is it?
501c3.
Okay, good. Tell me, what is, let's say, you're looking back 2 years from now on the 2 years you've had. What does success look like in numbers?
What success looks like is none of us are involved with the airport anymore because a private operator has taken over. And I have a steady stream of school kids coming out to take classes in the Aviation Education Annex. With any kind of luck, a manufacturer on some of the industrial zone land that we have out there, using people coming out of our curriculum to put airplanes and airplane components together. That's my wildest dream. I will settle for generating enough activity at the airport that a private operator comes in and takes over from us.
Thank you. Just a couple of more. You talked about the appetite for getting into Bennington by plane 10, 12 years ago. That it was a fairly large appetite, fairly lot of activity. Is the current appetite the same? Or in another way to put it, what do you do to rejuvenate that appetite?
A big part of that is the marketing, and part of it is we're actually going to have to go steal some customers from the Mount Snow folks. We've had a number of them stop by for one reason or another, typically because they can't get into Mount Snow. And when they see our airport and hear that we only charge $200 a month for a hangar, they become very interested in basing their airplane there and maybe driving to Mount Snow because it's much less expensive. So we're going to be reaching out that way, and we have some other connections that we're going to try and use to get to the Mount Snow type crowd. Beyond that, it really is marketing to the general aviation public through the magazines, through social flight, through various aviation targeted media.
What are the resources you need to implement the plans? And my final question, how do you get compensated?
Well, we don't actually. The way things had to work with the state, I had to become a state employee for 2 days a week in order to operate the fuel farm. because the state will not allow non-state employees to operate state equipment. So the state still owns the fuel fund. Beyond that, everything that we're doing is volunteer. Every dime that we make in the way of fuel sales or any other proceeds goes right back into the airport, and anything that's left over goes straight back to the state. So
Thank you.
none of us are making any money at this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. This is really fascinating. It's wonderful. So, and I love the idea about day tripper packages. That's great. So I'm also trying to understand exactly what will make the airport a robust enterprise. So you have a lot of businesses out there now, and it's hard for me, are you looking for a particular mix of businesses to make this viable? Is it, are the businesses separate from the fuel sales? What is it that will ideally make this work?
Of the businesses that are out there now, only 2 of them are aviation related.
Okay.
All the rest, like 802,
Yep.
they do website optimization, that sort of thing.
Yep.
What makes this work is we have perhaps 10 or 12 more airplanes based at the airport.
Okay.
We're looking to at least double, perhaps triple fuel sales. Increase the number of takeoffs and landings by about 200%. At that point, that's enough activity that I can start going to various FBOs, companies that operate these things, and present them with numbers that say, look, you can open up here, here's the traffic stats, here's the fuel stats, here's the number of airplanes that are available on the field who are going to want maintenance, and that's how their business model looks at the world. So we have to get those baseline numbers up before anything else happens.
Okay.
So robust is going to be, right now we have about 30 airplanes on the field. I would like to see that number up to 50 to 60.
Okay. And so when you say, so the fuel sales really are having more airplanes coming in and out?
Yep.
That's really what's driving this. All right.
Yep. In particular, if I can sell more jet fuel, that's a big indicator.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
John, thank you very much, both for coming here tonight, but also for your volunteerism. It's great what you and Chuck and Dave are doing.
Thanks.
It's wonderful for our community to have that kind of all-out volunteerism happening. And I don't want to end this really nice network of questions with a downer, but tell me, what's the worst-case scenario? If you folks hadn't stepped up and the numbers had continued to go down, you know, it seems like our state has a revenue problem, and is there a threat that eventually the state could pull the plug on the operation or could make it smaller or something? What's the worst-case scenario if the three of you hadn't taken this on?
If we hadn't gotten involved, the airport would essentially sit just the way it has been for the last 4 years, with nothing much going on and less going on every year. I don't think the state would ever close it because it figures heavily in federal funding for airports. ADAP funds, which is Airport Improvement and Development, is predicated on both numbers of operations and numbers of airports. So the formula is kind of complex, but that's how the state gets money to improve airports like Burlington. And if they stick to the timetable they've got, we're going to have our runway repaved and a new taxiway installed sometime starting next year or the summer after in 2018. So that's the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is you've got an airport that's vibrant, it's employing people in career path jobs, it's serving as a portal for careers to the youth in the area, and with any kind of luck, cross our fingers, I'll get a manufacturer out there and we'll actually have a factory operation going on.
That's great. Yeah, it's great. Thank you for coming to us with no threat and all opportunity. Appreciate that. I have no more questions, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Donald. I think Michael had a follow-up.
John, I think you have some of your colleagues here. Would you like to introduce them?
Well, Steve McClure, who I used to work with at Air Now, he was our chief pilot.
Okay,
And Lake Mirabeau, back there in the other blue shirt in the back row.
welcome.
Blake is the president of our EAA chapter. He's also the president of the Bennington Eagle Eye FPV Flying Club.
Thank you.
Thank you for that follow-up question. If effort, enthusiasm are keys to success, this is a real good road to take that you're taking right now. It was a great presentation, really very enlightening. Questions were good too. And anything that you feel that would warrant coming back and sharing your status or what your needs are or how things are going, feel free to work with Stu to get on the agenda. Because it is an asset that we should take advantage of. We talk about economic opportunity, and that's an opportunity sitting right there, right on our doorstep. And working with the Better Bennington and the Chamber of Commerce and other marketing activity, you're well off. So thank you very much for the time you've spent and the more time that you're going to have to spend. Appreciate it. Thank you, John.
All right, and if anybody wants to drop me an email, it's john.lakakis, Likakis, @gmail.com.
And the website again, John?
BenningtonAirport.com or BenningtonAirport.org.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We're going to have a discussion about the Bennington Redevelopment Group, and Bill Colvin is going to share some of that discussion with us. And just by way of background, as you know, last Tuesday, the Downtown Bennington Redevelopment Group, LLC, presented at a press conference news to the community that it had entered into an option with the Greenberg family for the potential acquisition of the Greenberg block and potential development. And I say it's potential because this is really the first step of what should be an exciting process. As I have said to some folks, myself included, as soon as the press conference was done, I was hoping there'd be scaffolding and cranes outside the hotel. But it's all a process, and again, as part of what we talked about 2 years ago now, it's a partnership. The private folks are stepping up. When I say private, I mean the institutions as well as private investors. And part of this success is going to be determined by the town's involvement, because much of what is going to take place there is going to require our support. And without investment, there's not going to be success. But right now, this is just the first, let's call it 38,000-foot discussion, presentation. Not a lot of discussion tonight, folks. Let's not get into the weeds, because I don't think the weeds are there to be developed yet. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill to share with us what's happened since last Tuesday.
Great, thank you, Tom. And thanks for talking long enough to get our media fired up.
Yep.
Unfortunately, you don't get a reprieve from a second PowerPoint, but it's almost all photos, so I think we'll appreciate it. Thanks for the introduction. I did see most of you last Tuesday at the press conference announcing the option agreement that Tom referenced. Following up with Tom and Michael after, we thought it would be good this evening to come, give a very high-level overview of the project, and really answer questions you have. I think most importantly, the final slide this evening will kind of paint the opportunities and really what we would consider necessities of the town involvement in this project if we're going to be successful. So bear with me. I want to give just a high-level overview, show some photos, talk about the structure. I'm not going to get into the weeds regarding the finances other than very generally. More importantly, I want to talk about what it means, this type of development, which we're calling community-enabled development. So why now with the Putnam block? A couple of things coalesced to come together at the same time. A group of business and institutional leaders in the community had been meeting for about the last year, talking about opportunities to become more involved in furthering Bennington's economy. Everybody within the group recognizing that Bennington's economic health was vital to their own institutional health and success. realizing that nobody was going to ride in on a unicorn from outside of Bennington to save the community, and we needed to do it ourselves, and really deciding that action needed to be of a significant enough scale to kind of move the needle with regard to the local economy. At the same time, the town of Bennington had sponsored the Bennington Downtown Area-Wide Plan that my organization, BCRC, and Stone Environmental facilitated. This was a planning and redevelopment study funded by the EPA and state of Vermont, and as things would turn out, it had a heavy focus upon the very properties that are the subject of this proposed redevelopment. I think many of you were at the final meeting where we summarized the Bennington Downtown Area-Wide Plan. This is available on the BCRC website, and I also believe the Town of Bennington website. But in quick summation, that plan reviewed the existing conditions within the downtown area, looking at environmental, infrastructure, and historic uses of the properties in downtown. It included a market study, a process of key site selection, which completely kind of independent of this project landed on the Greenberg block of properties, the Putnam block, which I think signifies the importance of those properties. It contained conceptual redevelopment scenarios for that block, feasibility analyses, and an implementation plan. And this project really is serving as a guide in many ways to this proposed redevelopment. The development priorities coming out of the Putnam block in the Bennington Area-Wide Plan we're first focusing on residential density in the downtown, recognizing that having additional people living in the downtown as renters first and perhaps moving to ownership down the road was really going to be an activator of the downtown economy, moving Bennington from an 8 or 9 or 10 hour downtown to a 15 or 16 or 18 hour downtown. And key to that is having people living in the downtown at a variety of income levels. Second, office and commercial space. The market study showed was the next easiest lift, and the goal being that additional people living and then working in the downtown would cause additional retail and restaurateurs to come in with targeted niches and fill those spaces. The development approach conceptualized in the conceptual analysis of the Putnam block included heavy pedestrian orientation, obviously reusing the historic buildings, which are kind of the iconic buildings in our downtown. It would be a mixed-use redevelopment based upon market opportunities and would rely heavily on improved park and streetscape, park atmosphere and streetscape amenities. So this was one of the conceptual renderings created by Centerline Architects, Kelly's here, looking at kind of what might happen, beginning with the building on the far left there is Old Castle Theater, showing some new construction. And there were a couple of conceptual redevelopment scenarios. This was one of the alternatives, which includes mixed-use redevelopment of the Courthouse, Putnam Hotel, Winslow Building, Old Castle Theater, and then shows some new construction, mixed-use building and perhaps apartments on what was formerly the Greenberg's building hardware and building supply property. So our specific project that Bennington Redevelopment Group is envisioning includes the properties of roughly 4 acres that are noted here, bounded by South Street, West Main, Washington Avenue, and Franklin Lane. The one exception being the building where Jay's Hallmark is, that is under Jay's Cars and Gifts and our offices, that is under separate ownership. So it's all of the buildings on the block except for Jay's. It does not include the property west of Washington. At this point, the Greenberg family wished to retain those properties. We did originally offer on those properties. Through negotiations, those were excluded. So obviously this is, one could argue, the most prominent location in downtown Bennington. It certainly includes the buildings that are best recognized in historical photos of Bennington and current photos of Bennington. It involves some of the most architecturally significant buildings in our downtown, and I think we all recognize that at this point it's significantly underutilized. The vision moving forward includes in-town living that I referenced, residential living, attractive retail and office space. We recognize that if we're going to have additional people living in and about downtown, that we need expanded options to grocery within walking distance of the Four Corners. We envision additional restaurants, some off-street parking. Everything there is intended to be vibrant and mixed use, with the overall project being an economic infusion into downtown Bennington and to the community at large. And what the group is really hoping is that this is really just kind of the next domino to fall in what will be a significant series of investment back into our community. So we've talked about institutions and the private individuals that have stepped up. The team at this point includes the Bank of Bennington, Southwestern Vermont Healthcare, Bennington College, Southern Vermont College, Global Z International, Brian McKenna, Anthony and Jacqueline Morrow, a group of local professionals who have formed an LLC and have, at their request, been asked not to be named publicly, but it's a group of local professionals, in all of whom are based in Bennington, and M&S Development at Brattleboro. M&S Development is the group that led the Brooks House redevelopment in Brattleboro. They will be assisting with financing, developing financing, and managing the project. They are also, I think it's important to note, equity investors in this property. They have put cash in just like everybody else listed on that list. So this is a group that will be raising funds, securing tenants, and looking to renovate the property. This is people that we put in, I'll get to it in a moment, what we refer to as leadership equity. First money in, the money that's completely at risk. And that's the money that has been raised to date. So again, this is community-enabled development. What does that mean? It means the type of redevelopment that has to happen in communities in Vermont. Downtowns in Vermont it's not viable to do redevelopment in traditional economic models where you bring in a tenant, you charge enough rent to consistently reinvest in the property and improve it. So we have to be a lot more creative about that, and that's where the community part comes into play. So we've already raised some equity from the community. We'll be going out to the community for some additional opportunities, which I'll talk about in a moment. But really, this project will also rely heavily on federal tax credits and state municipal support if, in fact, it's going to come together. And we've seen successful examples throughout Vermont. The Brooks House in Brattleboro is perhaps the best and closest to us, and many people here have gone over to visit. We heard Dom Cloud and his team come down from St. Albans and talk what has happened there. It's a very similar model, not the same model that was led by the community in a public-private partnership. This will be a model where the community will actually support the development. Barre, Vermont also has seen this type of redevelopment. I think what's interesting to note, and probably the one critical distinction that we have to overcome with our specific redevelopment, is the fact that in every one of these examples, the state of Vermont was the lead tenant in this redevelopment effort. Came in, took substantial space, and paid, frankly, above market rent to make these properties happen. Every single case. And if you look at Newport, St. Johnsbury, South Burlington, Rutland, other places, the state of Vermont was the lead anchor tenant. We don't have that opportunity here. The state made another decision a few years ago to rebuild out next to the deer park. So we have to figure out another way to do it, and that's why the institutions in this case are both critical as lead investors. They're also going to be important to them to serve some role as anchor tenants if we're going to be successful. So the Brooks House in Brattleboro was recently featured in Vermont Life. If you look at the photo on the right, I think anybody, if you squint, can envision the Hotel Putnam. Certainly there as well, it's eerily similar to the Hotel Putnam in terms of size, in terms of shape, and in terms of its location. That's High Street and Main Street, the key intersection in downtown Brattleboro. We're obviously located at South Street and Main Street in the same location. If you look at the photo in the upper left, you might as well also be standing at the Bennington Armory and looking at the back of the Hotel Putnam and Penny Saver building. It's very similar. So these are all the before photos after the fire ravaged the Brooks House in Brattleboro. These are before and after photos of the same spaces in the Brooks House. The one on the left is kind of the top is the atrium. The one at the bottom is one of the residential spaces that has been renovated and filled. And if you haven't been to Duo Restaurant in Brattleboro, I highly suggest a trip over. It's worth the trip. And Community College of Vermont and Vermont Technical College were the anchor institutions in the case of the Brooks House redevelopment. That's the CCV space at the bottom. Let's look at the schedule for a moment. Scaffolding is in fact not going up next week. We have some work to do ahead of that. So just to kind of paint what that picture looks like, we are now, we will be in the pre-development phase, hopefully after the due diligence phase. We anticipate that pre-development phase, which will be designing the project, locating tenants, lining up the financing, pulling together the various grant applications, to take 18 months. Now, we should know much sooner than that if we don't have a project. We don't expect that's going to be the case. But in 12 to 15 months, we will have a very good idea if this project is a definitive go or not. The entire pre-development phase could take as long as 18 months. Moving beyond that, we anticipate another 18 months to construct the project. So we're looking at, if everything goes well, people living, new restaurants, additional office space in the Hotel Putnam and the surrounding properties 3 years from now. So July of 2019. That's under the optimistic scenario. The operation phase is 5.5 years. Beyond that, and then a 3-year refinance phase. Those are really only important for the financing structures. It's kind of invisible to people on the street. I think the numbers that matter for people on the street are 18 months to design and develop the project, 18 months to construct it.
Bill, what does operation phase mean?
Based upon the financing structures that will be employed, specifically federal new market tax credits, there's a 7-year compliance period. So if you take the 18-month construction period where those new market tax credits will come into play, and the additional 5.5 years that will represent the 7-year compliance period of the new market tax credits. So for that period of time, all of the property has to be operated on a rental basis throughout that time. Everything there has to be leased. None of this property will be sold for fee simple ownership for a minimum of 7 years.
So what you're saying is that during that 5.5-year period, you've got to have full occupancy in order to take advantage of the tax credits?
We have to fulfill the obligations of the new market tax credits, which basically means the property needs to be at least 60% commercial occupancy, and we need to be making enough money to pay the bills.
Thanks.
So I think we all recognize the benefit of this investment to transform our downtown, infuse new energy and activity, hopefully raise property values throughout downtown and the community, create a cycle of increasing prosperity. I think the institutions involved here saw this as an opportunity at stabilizing institutional security, again linking their success with the success of Bennington's economy, and really kind of a shot in the arm for our downtown. I said I wasn't going to talk much about finances, but I think it's important to see kind of the bar graph on the right, which is the funding stack for this project. The $18 million is really irrelevant. It's our first guess at what a project might look like, taking from the penny saver around the block to and including Old Castle Theater. And that was our first pro forma. Reality is this project probably grows to 20, perhaps even 30 million if we start contemplating new construction as part of phase 1. But for the initial pro forma, 18 million, if you look at that funding stack on the right, starting from the bottom, nearly 40% of the project will come in the form of federal new market tax credits and historic rehabilitation tax credits. So that's the only way this project works.
Bill,
By way of example, the Brooks House project, the investors put in $24 million into that property to end up with a building that is worth slightly less than 8. Okay? That's the model that it will take to do this type of development here. We expect to invest 2.5 to 3 times the ultimate value of this property into this project. And the red section, debt supported by value, obviously, banks are only going to lend on what the end value of the property will be. So let's take that $8 million example. Banks are only going to lend 75 to 80% on that $8 million. So you need to make it up with tax credits. There's a grant section in there, and then the remainder is a community-supported equity, which is the leadership equity that we've raised to date, and preferred equity, which I'll talk about in a moment.
Bill, how do these tax credits, can you explain that to me? I'm kind of lost on it and how this, we benefit through this project.
So the new market tax credits are tax credits which are eligible in certain census tracts around the country to encourage economic development where it's not otherwise possible through traditional models. Downtown Bennington is smack dab in the middle of a census tract which is eligible for new market tax credits. So basically, we go through this process of application, we fulfill the obligations of new market tax credits. Those tax credits get sold off to U.S. Bank or some other large institutional investor, and that money comes into the project in the form of cash, functionally. So
Thank you.
and same thing with federal rehab tax credits. Okay, so those,
That's
you
great.
apply for the tax credits, they get sold off to investors, and it comes in as additional cash into the project.
I never knew that.
So there are 5 ways to contribute to this project. I'll be honest with you, we are still open to any of these. We're still looking for additional leadership equity. We will be going out to the community for preferred equity. I'll talk about that in a moment. There are private loan or guarantee opportunities. One thing that's unique in our project, which is different than any of the other projects, which were all for-profit, included for-profit only folks, is the presence of our not-for-profit institutions, the 2 colleges and the hospital, create a scenario here where somebody could participate in this project by donating to one of those institutions, making a tax-deductible donation to either one of the colleges or the hospital, and requesting that that money be funneled into this project. The contributor would get a tax write-off, just as you would if you donated to the college or the hospital, and that money would come into the project. So it's kind of a unique vehicle that we have here because of the presence of the institutions in this case, that hasn't existed elsewhere. And then the key to all of this is finding the tenants that are going to occupy these spaces for the next 10 years and beyond. Without critical, committed tenants, this project doesn't happen. So again, the leadership equity is the money that's come in now for those folks that were listed previously. Those are the folks that will be the ultimate owners of the project, and that money is all completely at risk, subject to the pre-development risk, operation risk, refinancing risk, all of the risks that were noted up there. That leadership equity money is subject to those. Once we know we have a project and we have bank financing in place, roughly that 18 months out before we begin the construction phase, we'll be going out for a second raise of equity called preferred equity. And we'll be going out to community members, and we're targeting $1 million of additional equity from community members in this phase. We're targeting that in not more than 40 $25,000 or more slugs. And the reason we're targeting that number of people and that dollar amount is that's the maximum that can be raised without doing prospectus filings with the SEC. One unique vehicle that we will have here is the opportunity to do what's called a dedicated IRA. So we'll set up a Putnam block redevelopment IRA where you could, as an individual investor, reorient $25,000 of IRA money that you may have sitting in a bank and dedicate it to this project. You would get a return. We're estimating 3% annual return on that investment. And at the end of 10 years, which was that other timeline up there, you would get a return of that $25,000. So it's preferred equity. It really acts like a bond in this case, where you put in $25,000, you get a 3% annual return. At the end of the 10-year period, you get your principal back. It's equity because if, for whatever reason, you don't get your principal back, you're the proud owner of what remains of the Putnam redevelopment. Private loaner guarantees are obviously what they say they are. We are hoping to raise enough equity to be able, when we go to banks, to get non-recourse financing so that there are not personal guarantees involved. We're not sure that we're going to be able to secure non-recourse financing. If not, there will need to be some type of loan guarantees. So that's an opportunity to participate. In the Brattleboro example, a community member who was not one of the 5 original investors put his house up as collateral in order to secure a loan to make that project happen. So just somebody community-minded. The charitable contributions that I noted through any of the 3 not-for-profit institutions, and we're obviously at this point aggressively looking for tenants beyond the occupancies that we hope the institutions will take. And finally, roles for the town. So I anticipate that I will be back along with other members of the team fairly frequently over the next 18 months to talk about opportunities for the town to participate in this project. These are just kind of big picture opportunities. I noted a slug in that funding stack of grants. We anticipate 1 and probably 2 community development block grants will be necessary to make this project fly. I think most of you are familiar enough with CDBG to realize that only municipalities can apply for community development block grants. So there will be another beneficiary, probably a local not-for-profit, perhaps BCIC in this case, that would be the subrecipient, but the municipality has to be the applicant for community development block grants. We anticipate, as a heads up, that we will be targeting the CDBG round as early as this November. So discussions regarding this grant could happen sometime over the summer. There may be requests for tax stabilization as part of the redevelopment. Some of that debt that comes into the project may take the form of the town's revolving loan program. We would look for cooperation on parking. As this project is designed, I think everybody on the project team believes that as much of the parking as possible should be public parking as a benefit to the community. So there may be an opportunity to partner with the town in that regard. We do not envision that the town would be building parking lots, but perhaps if built to town spec, the town could ultimately take over that parking as an additional community benefit. And I understand, we understand that there are upgrades scheduled to both Franklin Lane and Washington Avenue. I think the request here would be that we're in communication regarding those improvements, and that obviously the developers will be responsible for anything that happens on private property. Perhaps we could coordinate the improvements that are happening within the public right-of-way as part of projects that you have already planned on the docket. So it's a really quick, high-level overview of the project, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Good. I think we'll go right down the line. And again, try not to get into the weeds tonight, because we're going to get this discussion at a much more intense level. The whole purpose of this was to give the board and potentially the community sort of an oversight of where we're going, because not everyone gets the benefit of the press conference.
Right. So exciting. Thank you so much for a great presentation. The people who have approached me thus far have been confused about the town's role in this and the kind of public-private partnership of it. So a lot of people have been sending me ideas, oh, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. So would you just address that a little bit squarely, please, so kind of where I know, I think I understand it, but it might help with some of the responses that we're getting.
So what, I guess I'm not clear on exactly what the question is.
Well, somebody would be calling me and say, oh, well, the town should put a hotel there. Okay. And so the answer, of course, is, well, the town's not doing this.
Right.
But
so this is, in fact, it's a private development. It's being, so the ultimate arbiters of what happens there are the developers. I mean, we're lucky in this case that those developers are made up of very community-minded institutions and kind of anchors in this community. So I think everybody can feel comfortable that what happens there is going to be in the best interest of the community. I understand completely that many people you talk to probably have different ideas about what the perfect project looks like there. The reality is the perfect project there is the project that we can get done. That's what the perfect project is. And that means the tenants that we can attract and the tenants that will pay the bills are the tenants that are going to end up as part of this project. I mean, there's really no other way for this project to happen. We have the benefit. We had the benefit when we went through this process.
Right.
Okay? This was a thoroughly vetted community process with countless opportunities for community input, a public steering committee, a number of public meetings, public charrettes, and we gathered those ideas, and we are using this, Bennington Redevelopment Group is using this as a guide. So I think a lot of that kind of public input, we believe, has happened, and we're taking with it, and we're running with it. I mean, it's interesting. I've been here a number of times to ask for, support for grant applications for planning projects, and what do I hear from somebody somewhere? All we do is plan. We never do anything. We never implement. Well, we're implementing, okay? And we're implementing a plan that was vetted with the community.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
Well, I also think this is really exciting, and I have a similar question.
Sure.
The community-enabled part, I think, does beg, are there places in this process where the community will have another chance to give input? And I think when people say, where is the community in this? Yes, there have been some planning open events, but they didn't know that it was actually going to come to fruition. So, now that something's possible to happen, people pay a little more attention. What do you see any role for community involvement in this?
So, all of these 5 are opportunities for community involvement. So anybody who'd like to put in leadership equity or preferred equity can participate as part of the project. You put it and become a part of the leadership equity team, and just to put a face on that, that's a $100,000 minimum commitment. You become part of Bennington Redevelopment Group. You sit at the table where the decisions are made. So that's wide open to anybody in the community that would like to participate. There's opportunities through the preferred equity, and I think probably most importantly, down the road is at the very bottom. We are open to leads for committed tenants and people who might be a tenant in this project. And if it's a good fit and if it's a tenant that will be beneficial to the community, we'll talk to them. And we envision we're going down a road based upon what the market study has shown us. And what the market study has shown us is the easiest lift is going to be the residential. Okay? So we are going to have something around 100,000 square feet in phase 1 to fill. So we have to do that in the most expeditious way possible. So residential is part of that. It presents the additional benefit of putting additional people in the downtown, would make all of these other occupancies that much more realistic. But we need to find the other occupancies too. The other thing that we're doing is relying upon the institutions that are involved here to take some of the additional space. So residential, institutions from some of the institutions that we know, and we start to begin to put together what is frankly this redevelopment jigsaw puzzle, because that's what it is. So if there are ideas about tenants, and I think people need to understand, this is not an incubator building. This isn't, my cousin wants to start a restaurant. They're really good at grilling hamburgers. Can we put them in the space and support them? I mean, these are people who are going to have going concerns and pay what is frankly higher rent than what is probably realized in downtown Bennington right now as part of this redevelopment. So we're going to be committed tenants as part of a project going forward.
And do you anticipate needing a partnership to find the sufficient residential tenants to move into the downtown, or do you think that that population exists now and are looking for the opportunity?
So we're gonna update the market study that was done as part of the Bennington Downtown Area-Wide Plan, but that market study suggests there are two kind of blocks of people which are anxious to live in the downtown, and that's kind of over 55 singles and couples, and 25 to 35 singles and couples. So we think the market is there. The institutions that are involved, they're probably going to be asked to sign master leases for some number of the apartments that we're going to build. By way of example, in the Brooks House in Brattleboro, the project leaders went out to the community and they went to their largest corporations and said, GS Precision, you need to sign a lease for 2 apartments. You're taking 2 apartments in the Brooks House. And so on and so forth through all of the largest institutions in the community. And they got commitments from institutions for all 21 of the residences in the Brooks House. Not one of those businesses paid 1 penny of rent because they all went to real occupants, people who wanted to move in to live there before the project was complete. So that's the process. I expect we'll go to the hospital and the colleges and say, we're going to need you to sign a master lease for some period of time in order for us to get financed to do this project.
Okay, thank you.
Please, Mike.
I congratulate you, and I congratulate especially the community leaders who are putting capital at risk to make this happen. I think a number of us have said a number of times, if we're not willing to invest in our community, why should anybody else do it? So this is really proof of the pudding. In terms of the redevelopment about the project, you talk about off-street parking. Would you see something in Bennington like, for example, the off-street parking behind Main Street that St. Albans developed? Or what kind of ideas do you have in that now?
Well, I think the details will emerge as we identify tenants and ultimate uses there, but I think the concept as presented in the Bennington Area-Wide Plan and solid planning principles all suggest that new construction will happen at the street and parking will be tucked in behind. So we would anticipate that any new parking developed there would be accessible off of Franklin Lane, perhaps Washington Avenue, but
Thank you.
behind
Thanks.
the building.
And you can shoot me for this one. This is the geeky part of me. Could you just talk a little more about the refi phase?
Sure. So the refinance phase will come into play. We will get traditional bank financing to do the construction. We will have the new market tax credit. We're anticipating that the preferred equity will have a 10-year term. So somewhere between 7 and 10 years, we'll be going out to put in place what is functionally the permanent financing for the project. And what that means is, at the end of 7 years, everything that's there as tax credit functionally goes away and comes off the balance sheet. Okay, it disappears. And it's come in as cash, and nobody is owed any of that money. The grants are grants, so we'll be looking, and the equity is equity. So it's really about that red block in refinancing that red block. The goal there is at the end of that period, you have a property which is worth, pick a number, $10 million, and we're able to go out and find a bank who is willing to lend $8 million on that property.
Great. Bill, thank you very much.
Bill, you know, I sent, for those of you who don't know, I sent Bill a laudatory email praising him for just this outstanding work that you've done. And you didn't say I couldn't say it in public, but you said I couldn't say it in print. At any rate, in addition, credit goes to my fellow board members, Tom Jacobs and Michael Keene, who brought the mayor and town manager of St. Albans down here and really got this thing going, because as Tom said, you know, things as they were not working, and we needed to do this. At any rate, so I hope I didn't tick you off, but you deserve credit and a lot of it, Bill, for the work that you did. Nevertheless, my question for you is, with respect to this proposed development, could Shires Housing play a role in this with respect to affordable housing and the grants that, the ridiculous amounts of money that they've gotten for some of the projects here in Bennington? Wouldn't that make a likely or good partnership?
So, it's entirely possible if you look at something, a redevelopment scenario like this, that some component of new apartments, perhaps for ownership townhomes in subsequent phase, we could do something of mixed income there, which potentially could involve, Shires Housing there. I think that, would certainly be a possibility. I think we need to get a feel for the demand for market rate housing. I think we'll have a good feel for that after we do phase 1 and see how quickly, to Jeannie's question, real people are living in, willing to pay rent and what the demand is there. And I think that will help us paint a picture for what additional development looks like on that site.
Thanks, Bill.
I've got a lot of questions, but I'm not gonna hammer here with them tonight. We'll keep it on the little bit of higher level, but it's a really interesting project. It looks like an amazing opportunity. Hopefully it can come to fruition, and I think you can expect our full support in whatever way you folks need it, so.
I don't have questions, I have more comments. The first thing I'm gonna say is I'm really happy to be on the select board right now. It's a really fun time to be on the select board.
3 years from now is even better.
I just feel like this project represents the best of Bennington, and it kind of speaks to who we are as a community. We kind of, support each other and come together when we need to, and it just warms my heart. I think it's great, and I feel like, that we had the presentation on the airport. It's kind of like, feels like the planets are aligning, and at the same time that's happening, malls are closing and downtowns are becoming the places where people want to be. They don't want to be in huge big box stores anymore, so everything's sort of coming together at the right time, and it's so exciting.
And I would echo that. I think all of the credit goes to the institutions that have been talking about this and stepping up and looking for a way to invest in their own community. Yes, they recognize that it's critical to their institutional success. It's certainly about more than that. And really, this is our time. If we cannot make this redevelopment project happen with the people who have stepped up to make it happen, the institutions and the individuals, and the select board that we have in place now, it's simply not going to happen. So, this is our time. Things have aligned, and we need to take full advantage of the opportunity.
I just want to say one more thing. I fully support community involvement. Obviously, it's a wonderful thing. But the people that have stepped up are our community. So I feel like the community is very well represented by the people that have stepped up. Not that we can't have more of that, but I'm very confident that we have very, very community-minded people leading this project.
And, and I hope I was in no way misconstrued that we're very interested in what the community has to say. We're very interested in leads for tenancies. We have heard some express disappointment that the original phase may not include a hotel. If a hotelier were to call me tomorrow and say we're interested in the site, they'll be brought aboard. We will have every discussion possible. This project is evolving. We're building it as we speak. The key is committed tenants, people who are willing to be a part of the redevelopment, and people who understand they cannot own the real estate for a minimum of 7 years. So if those things can be structured, we're open to all sorts of ideas. And, frankly, I've received emails and phone calls already since the press conference with people who said, hey, we might be interested.
That's great. And that's the word we want to even get out tonight, even on a more broader base. And frankly, the community has got skin in the game. And that particular page 4, that block, that's where we're going to have some community dialogue and input, because community is going to want to know how we're spending the revolving loan funds and what's the ask and how's the give. And those are the type of things that I think we'll have some community input and some real valid discussion. And as to, we all heard about the hotel. Where is the hotel? You know, there's a lot of space in for a hotel in downtown Bennington. It doesn't have to be the lights on of the Putnam Hotel. You can go right around the corner to where the Tuttles used to be, where Greenberg's still on the other side. So there are opportunities. What we're seeing develop here is phase one of a real economic development for this community redevelopment. And we're just fortunate that we've got the leadership taking on that first one, and that's the heaviest lift. What will follow from there, I think, is going to be a lot easier once we show success. But thank you, Bill. I don't think, is there, if there's a question from the community, we've got an appointment at the town garage at 7:25, which we're going to be, yeah, you can make a real quick one if you could, Mike. But, do you have much of a report tonight from the manager?
Just a
Could you
couple of-
circulate that as we're listening to Mike? The
Liquor license?
liquor license? Yeah.
Part of our new developments.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
Congratulations to both, like Gene said, the airport presentation and what Bill's doing. And I hope this works. It sounds exciting. It's the best thing that's come down the pipe in the last 20 years that I've been back here. If it happens, I hope it does. The question I have, though, is what is the first phase for the 90 days? Or say everything goes through with the environmental and everything else, are you going to be able to secure the property in that right after that 90 days so you can start working on raising community awareness and maybe raising funding from the community either through private donations or maybe put something on the March ballot, something like that?
So, excellent question. The 90 days is the due diligence phase to do, frankly, the only contingency in the agreement is environmental. So we'll be doing phase one and phase two environmental site assessments as required to establish innocent prospective purchaser status. Assuming those things, I mean, they've all been pretty well vetted sites. I mean, there's been environmental site assessments done there, but we need to gather that, and we need to go through the appropriate process to make sure there's no surprises there. At the end of that 90 days, we have 30 days to close on the property, in which, at the end of that 30-day period, 120 days from 2 weeks ago, Bennington Redevelopment Group will own the property. But we're not waiting. I mean, if I wasn't clear tonight, we're raising money now. Anybody who'd like to donate equity to the project, come on
I would just
board.
like to know, as somebody who wants to support this, that after you secure the property, we, as the public, whoever wants to support this, could go out and sell the project to try to raise the money and support the ideas, blah, 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 blah. That's what I'm saying.
We expect Bennington Redevelopment Group will own the property in less than 120 days.
Give me a shake. You deserve it. Good going, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you. This is just the start of something that we'll be happy to be on the select board for the next couple of years to see develop.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention and the opportunity tonight. You'll be seeing a lot of us.
Yeah, that's
We'll see
great.
you soon.
Thank you, Bill.
We've just signed a application for a license for a beer and wine for not Rementos, for Cilantro.
Cilantro.
And what's the time of their planning and opening?
I think they want to be open in August.
August? August. Great. It's another important part of downtown that there seems to be a lot more activity than what we have seen in recent years. So, wish you well, Cilantros. Manager's report.
Yes, just a couple of quick action items. The first is Kevin Goodhue, our Deputy Health Officer. His appointment expires July 31st. There is a recommendation form. The state actually makes the appointment. I would need a motion authorizing the chair to sign the recommendation form, and we would then forward that on to the state, and it should be a fait accompli.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion? It's unanimous, 7-0.
Tom, you only need to sign that.
Okay.
The second is a block party that is scheduled.
Thanks.
The town is one of the sponsors. Several of our other partners in the whole Project Catalyst opportunity are going to be working together to throw a block party for the residents of Pleasant Street. And in order to do that, it's Saturday, July 30th. We would like to close the road from Park Street east to Main Street from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. And I would need a motion by the board to authorize that.
Is there a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Park to Main Street?
Park Street to Main on Pleasant, closing Pleasant from Park to Main.
That's not that
Big
long.
party.
We hope so.
Huge. I mean, you're talking about all the way to,
Yeah, well, the partners are putting together games for kids all along the street, live music potentially. We're looking to have perhaps the Bennington Fire Department barbecue. So it looks like it's going to be a nice event.
Basically, for that part of the community, it's a nice way to recognize it. Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have
Great,
7.
thank you. That's it for me.
Okay. You know, we're going to continue our session at the Depot Street facility, so we will not adjourn until after that. But is there any other business that should be conducted before we go to the facility?
I have some questions. Stu, a constituent, actually several, via social media, we're complaining about a lack of good reception with respect to Wi-Fi, especially within the area of Northside Drive. And I know Mike Carrington, our science guru, or tech guru isn't here. Nevertheless, I thought I'd ask you if you...
I'm certainly not a Wi-Fi guru.
Because
I am an old dog.
what's been related
Wi-Fi
to
doesn't
me
matter
is
to me.
that it's impeded their ability to do business in that part of...
I really can't speak as to why that particular area is difficult. The
we
best
find
I can
out?
do is try to find out.
Could we find out if that's true?
That's it, thanks.
Any other business? If not, we will continue or recess and reconvene in 5-10 minutes over the facility. So, let's go. Great, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
We don't even have to do it.
Okay.